Yeah, any time you have a young man that's getting ready to go serve in the military for our country, you always appreciate that. But this is still a game of football. We're trying to win.
It's a pass, good pickup, deep throw, wide open is Tariq Black. Touchdown, Michigan! Michigan first and 10 from the 28-yard line in Middle Tennessee. Back to throw Patterson, looking, throwing deep. He's got Nico Collins out there. Touchdown, Michigan! Another strike. This time 28 yards.
Episode 2 of Hail to the Podcast, a Michigan Wolverines podcast presented by the Wolverine Lounge and Big Heads Media. I'm your host, Brandon Justice from the WolverineLounge.com. Joined by me, as always, is my co-host, Daniel Dash. Daniel, how you feeling today?
Doing well. What about you?
I am feeling good. It's a Wednesday. The preseason, the off-season, all of that, it's over with. We are officially in the midst of college football. It is week 2.
It feels good to say.
Yeah, week 0 is week 0. I don't count that. That's not college football, especially the Miami-Florida display. Wasn't for me. Now we are in the mix of things. We head into week 2 with a full slate of what was week 1, an exciting week 1. Not the best slate. There really wasn't a lot of high-power games. I remember 2017 was an insane slate. This one, not so much, but it delivered. I mean, Auburn-Oregon was a fantastic football game.
Oh, yeah. Stanford-Northwestern went right down to the end, too.
Yep, absolutely. Tons of good football last week. Let's hop right into it with what we have on the slate for the day. I got a few segments for you guys lined up. Obviously, don't have to dive into the depth chart like we did last week, but what we can do is recap and look ahead. It is Army week. Nothing like hosting service academies. Everyone says don't do it, and then you do it, and you're scared until Saturday.
Yeah, and I think that this Army team in particular is scary. We'll delve into that in a little bit, but look, this is a team that's going to march into the big house with the second longest winning streak in college football. So
people forget.
Yeah.
People forget.
Yeah.
So let's recap what we saw out of the Middle Tennessee State game. Obviously, you always look forward to the first game and just to see what it is. At the end of the day, people have to put into perspective how small the sample size was of that game. What were your 3 biggest takeaways, or just give me a couple of takeaways from that game?
I think, first of all, Zach Charbonnet is the real deal. This is a guy who was hyped up. He came to Ann Arbor this summer on crutches, worked his way through a fall camp battle, emerged as the number 1 depth chart in a room of 3 really good running backs, 3 running backs that could be a feature back. These are all candidates who, maybe besides True, because, his strength is pass blocking, but, Christian Turner is feature back worthy, and Charbonnet with pass blocking, he caught 2 receptions, he had a 41-yard touch. I mean, on 8 carries, this guy went for 90 yards. I think he showed just what he can be.
Yeah, around 11, almost 12 yards a carry for Zach Charbonnet. Not bad for a true freshman whatsoever.
Oh, yeah, not bad for anyone.
And as you said, Christian Turner was really the garner of all attention following that Peach Bowl, probably the only thing that people liked along from that Peach Bowl. And here we are a few months later, and all the talk is Zach Charbonnet, a true freshman. As far as some statistics go, Michigan outgained the Raiders 453 to 301. That 301 a little skewed. Obviously, that one of the last plays of the game was with Michigan's second-team defense out there, which was, another it attributed to their 21 points, which a lot of people are upset about, at 40 to 21 for a win. I mean, look, Michigan in that first half, that's really what they're trying to be. They're trying to pass to set up the run. RPO's scarce now, which is good. This is a team where you could basically take a bucket full of everything you've done for the past few months, especially in camp, and just dump it out and section off, hey, this worked, this didn't.
Yep.
A lot of people are hoping the 2-quarterback formation is one of the things that made it to the side that said, hey, that didn't work. But it was based on what Dylan McCaffrey said at player availability. Sounds like it's probably going to continue. Whether it works or not is, up to them, I guess. But what did you think about that system?
I mean, I think it looked pretty unpolished on Saturday night, but you know that there are some of the best minds in college football in Schembechler Hall right now, breaking down that film, looking for what went wrong. Not a big fan of splitting a quarterback out wide. I don't love that. I think that, especially if you're going to throw him the ball for 1 yard the way McCaffrey did, and then he took a pair of big hits, that's really asking for trouble. But in a way, The way you got to look at it is it could be an effort to appease McCaffrey while maximizing talent with the way the transfer market has become college football free agency. This is a guy who's arguably the nation's top backup quarterback, and he plays a big role in that quarterback room against the scout team. I'm sure he throws all over that first team defense in practice. He's a guy with real talent, a guy who they hope is the starting quarterback a year from this very moment. So
yeah, I mean, he's a guy that they want to get on the field. I don't know if that's the right way to do it.
It's
and
not.
I know that the fans don't want to see it, and I can understand why. There's not a lot to justify, which segues, there's not a lot of things they can justify, which segues into my next part of the whole Dylan McCaffrey should somehow find a way to be higher on the depth chart than Shea Patterson. Look, Shea Patterson had 3 touchdowns in the first half, 197 yards. We went over this in the press box. He had the same amount of pass attempts in the first half that he averaged last year in all of the games last season in 2018. How can you gather that? I mean, Dylan McCaffrey came in and had 2 pass attempts. I get it. The staff didn't scheme for Dylan McCaffrey to throw the ball that much. Okay, that's great. You still have no backing whatsoever to justify Dylan McCaffrey as your starting quarterback.
Absolutely.
Looking back in the 2018 season, he ran the ball. When he was most effective, he was running the ball. The Penn State run, running the ball.
you could say the same about Saturday night.
A touchdown, running the ball. He had 2 pass attempts. People love these things. Michigan fans, and John New Bacon said it best. We talked about his book beforehand, before the show. He's always said this. Michigan fans aren't happy unless they're unhappy. And that's a fact. Your quarterback has 3 touchdowns and almost 200 yards in the first half. And they're passing the ball at will. And you're still upset. I mean, yeah, sure. The Tariq Black touchdown was a little underthrown. When he's that wide open, you're just trying to get it to him. You're not worrying about the pinpoint. He's wide open. Wide open. And somebody in my comments was saying along the terms of, well, if somebody was there, buddy, nobody was there.
Yep.
So it didn't matter. If somebody was there, it could have been picked off. Yeah. And if pigs could fly, we'd see them in the sky. But that's not a reality. There was nobody in the end zone at that moment. So Shea Patterson made the best throw he could, added off his back foot. And then I saw some blame for the Ronnie Bell drops on Shea Patterson. Where do you want Ronnie Bell to? Where do you want the ball to go for Ronnie Bell to catch it?
If not his hands.
Right. I mean, I get that the throw to him that was wide open was, I guess, a little overthrown. Shea Patterson under pressure in that moment, a little
Also off his back
overthrown.
foot.
Another one off the back foot. I get it. You still got to grab it. The one where he was blanketed in the end zone and it went off his fingertips, that's perfect throw in the moment. I mean, the guy was blanketed, and he put it the only place he could catch it. And he didn't catch it because guess what? Ronnie Bell is not a current NFL prospect, and that was an NFL throw for an NFL receiver to grab.
Absolutely.
Bare facts. I mean, bare facts.
Yeah.
There's probably only 1, maybe 2 players on this team that could catch that ball. I think Peoples-Jones is probably one of those guys, but Tariq Black and Nico Collins are other guys, right?
Yeah, I agree.
So going into the recap of the game, here's some things that I learned from it. You said yours. My takeaway was, look, these receivers are very, very much so legitimate. This team's strength and this team's gas pedal offensively is going to start and end with how often and how quickly they can get the ball to their receivers. The offensive line was good, right? It's without its starting left tackle. Jalen Mayfield is very green on the right side. The interior was kind of a disappointment. If I had to pick a disappointment from this game offensively, I didn't think Cesar Ruiz and Michael Onwenu really lived up to what they were supposed to be. There was some penetration coming inside that put Shea Patterson in tough spots at times during the game, hobbling. Well, you couldn't really tell he was hobbling, but obviously hurt from that first play where he fumbled the ball.
Yep.
So I was a little disappointed in that. But the receivers, this team's success offensively starts and ends with its receivers. You can put whomever you want at quarterback. Look, I'm going to come in there and throw the ball to Nico Collins. He's probably going to catch it. And I think Michigan realizes that this year, and I think Josh Gaddis realizes that this year. And I think the fact that Michigan backed off throwing the ball in the second half, only 7 attempts, was pretty much just an ode to the fact that, hey, let's work on our run game. We have a whole half to do it. We know we're going to win this football game. Again, let's throw everything out in the bucket, and let's separate what works and what doesn't. This is the only game on the schedule you can do that. Army's tough. And everything else is Big Ten play. I mean, there's Rutgers.
Right.
You could probably try some stuff against Rutgers.
Oh, yeah, and you're not going to dump the bucket out against Notre Dame, despite the fact that that's non-conference.
You're not going to dump it out at Wisconsin. You're not going to dump it out against Notre Dame. Illinois looked good. I mean, there's just too many situations in this schedule where you're not going to be able to do the things that you were able to do against Middle Tennessee State from an experimental standpoint.
Yeah.
It's not an easy schedule. You got 1 week to try it all out. They did it. They still won the game by 3 possessions. Granted, that's including a garbage time touchdown from Middle Tennessee State. Should have been 4 possessions. Did they look sloppy in the process? Absolutely. Absolutely. But is that offense better night and day than last year's? Absolutely.
Yeah, and you talk about takeaways. I think one of my biggest takeaways was the tempo itself.
Right.
I mean, you dropped the stat on Shea throwing 25 balls in the first half. It's not even throwing the 25 balls. It's the fact that he looks comfortable doing so, and that he's doing it well, and that he's on target. He's moving around well in the pocket. Granted, that was with an injury. He's rolling out. He's finding receivers while he's under pressure. This is a guy who was hampered by the huddle last year, and now, with the signs coming in from the sideline, which is a process, it still needs to be developed.
Right.
You had Tariq Black with the illegal substitution after McCaffrey's reception. That kind of tanked the drive, led to a penalty, and then a Patterson sack. They had to bring out the punt unit for that. Well, while we're on the topic of the punt unit, Will Hart is the man.
Incredible.
He is.
He's an incredible.
There are not many that will do it better than that guy.
He's got 85, 88 power in Madden, 99 accuracy.
I'd say so. If there was a possible attribute rating higher than 99 for accuracy and a badge for pinning it inside the 5-yard line, Will Hart would have gold.
And Michigan averaged 12 yards completion. 11.6, we'll call it 12. 12 yards in completion. And people are complaining. Because a bulk of that, 89% of its pass production came in the first half because it only attempted 7 passes in the second. So pretty much when Michigan's offense is running it as if it needs to win a ball game, which is what it did in the first half, it averages around 12 yards in completion against a team like Middle Tennessee State. Where's the complaints coming from? I don't know. And I know to the informed fan, I think, and to the, I don't want to say intelligent because I don't want to make anybody too upset. The informed
fan is a good way
but
of
the
putting
informed
it.
fan should know that the first half was what the offense is going to be. And I think the informed fan should know that Shea Patterson is well-deserved as this team's heralded and starting quarterback. However, for the people listening that are still convinced, and believe me, don't get me wrong, Dylan McCaffrey, going to be great. Dylan McCaffrey, probably going to start next season. Don't get me wrong, all those things are true. However, when you have a system like this and a program like this where you're filtering through the quarterbacks that you have, it's a great room. Joe Milton's a third stringer, and he can launch a ball 80 yards on a spiral.
Oh, yeah.
Well, let's move on from that.
Looks like a launch angle coming off the bat of Mike Trout when Joe Milton winds up to throw that ball.
The kid himself. Who disappointed you most in the game? Who are you trying to see more out of after this game?
I think as a unit, the 4-man defensive pressure did not. The 4-man defensive
and
line
I had the same
did
thing.
not put enough pressure on the quarterback. Granted, Middle Tennessee was throwing the ball quick.
Right.
They know that Michigan's going to bring the pressure. This is a 3-step drop back and throw kind of offense. I think Asher O'Hara actually did a great job against Michigan. Don't think he got enough credit. He's a competitor, a grinder.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
he got hurt a couple of times, came back in.
Yeah. And the fact that Michigan couldn't put pressure on him can partly be attributed to the fact that Asher O'Hara was taking the 3-step drop and throw. But the counter to that is, why not any batted balls or not enough batted balls?
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of push. There wasn't a lot of push. And the same thing can be said on the other side, is that the offensive line the interior of the offensive line didn't get enough push, especially on pass protection. It just wasn't where it needed to be. I think their run blocking was pretty great. I mean, in what we saw, again, there was a lot of gadget running in the second half, but when it came to just inside zone type stuff, you really saw Zach Charbonnet burst through big holes, and he's the kind of running back that gives you a guy who can see hole and dart through hole, right? And that's something that I think Michigan's been missing in recent years. Kron Higdon is Kron Higdon. I think he did good things. I think Zach Charbonnet is a guy who gives you a much higher ceiling. As far as who disappointed me, I'm sticking with you as far as the defensive line goes. As far as players of the game, it's pretty obvious defensively it has to be Emory Thomas. I mean, what a story. I know we talked about it, so we won't touch too much on it. What a story. Great for him. Fumble recovery, interception. Did not get targeted a whole lot either. He or Lavert Hill in an offense that was just gunning the ball as much as they possibly could.
Yeah.
Another credit to the linebackers and the safeties who brought a lot of pressure, and made up for the lack thereof as far as the defensive line goes.
Absolutely. And the NASCAR package. When they lined up 4 defensive ends, they just told them, all right, they snapped that ball, you go get Asher O'Hara.
Got to see Josh Uche in the field more. That would be my one analysis there from the NASCAR package. He's great in it, but they need to see more of it in all packages.
This guy grades out as a top player almost every single week.
And Hey, Don Brown is great, so he's going to do his thing, and I'm not going to judge it too much, but I would say Josh Uche, more snaps, please.
I think Sean Nua touched on that today. Don Brown, where he really excels and has made a massive difference at Michigan, is designing packages that maximizes every player's talent. So
he really adapts well.
Yeah.
As much as people love to bring up the word adapt when it came to his pass defense over the offseason, he adapts well to his personnel.
I think so, too.
Offensively, I'm going to go with a little bit of a dark horse. I don't think he was getting a whole lot of love between the week. Tariq Black in the first half was absolutely incredible. I mean,
couldn't be stopped.
I mean, geez. Talk about, hey, I'm healthy. It's like he saw the opportunity with Donovan not playing, and he said, I'm going to seize this to the highest regard because he was over the middle. He was on the outside. He was getting touchdowns. He was blocking on runs. He was the RPO to Tariq Black over the middle. Goodness gracious, it's automatic, or it was at least in that game. Again, small sample size, but in that game, automatic. It couldn't have been any better. Tariq Black's hands were there. His run after catch was there. His everything was working well, and you can tell Shea Patterson in the RPO system, although a small sample size, was on the same page as Tariq Black. I mean, that ball was there. Tariq was there. It wasn't wide. It wasn't behind him. It wasn't over him. Nico Collins had a drop, I think his first drop of his career. Yeah. Regardless, that was a ball that was, maybe a little bit of a chemistry thing. But with Tariq Black over the middle and on the outside, there was no such thing as a lack of chemistry. Right. So that's my offensive and defensive players of the game. I'm sure you're going with Ambry defensively, but offensively, who do you got?
Yeah, I got to go with Shea. I just think that this is an offense that is perfectly designed for him. I think with the tempo, I think with the way they run the plays, with the way they sub in, they just keep it going. And it's a guy who excels when he's going. So, I mean, if you want to talk about a guy who's just going to feed off a rhythm, if this is something that, if Shea can string together games and months and eventually a whole season of what he showed in the first half, I think that people should be buying him up at 25-1 Heisman odds.
Oh, God. No breaks.
No breaks.
So let's go to segment 2 here. We're going to talk about some inside intel. It's kind of a short one this week. There isn't really a whole lot to touch on outside of just injuries. Inside intel is always a very informative thing in the offseason. We're able to gather some stuff from camp and from practices and really, touch on who's doing what because a lot of it's in the dark. Yep. There's no preseason injuries this year that really detrimented anything outside of Donovan, who sounds like he's probably not going to make it back this week, which is fine. I mean, we saw that offense is going to be completely fine against these kind of teams. Army's offense, quite scary. Its defense, less scary, right? And Michigan's got the depth at receiver. If there's any position you need to lose a guy at Michigan, if you had to pick one, it's receiver because you've got so much behind him.
Yeah,
Donovan,
D-line.
Yeah, and Donovan not going to come back this week from the sound of it, barring something good. I know that there was a report out there, I believe it was Michael Spath, who had an official report on it, so we'll call it per him. I'm hearing similar stuff, though. I mean, it's no reason to rush anything like that. It's a high ankle thing.
And with the bye next week,
the bye plays him perfectly.
Give him the extra time he needs. Make sure he gets out of that boot and heals right. And bring him back when he's 100%.
Good news is Sean Nua, defensive line coach, did confirm that Donovan Jeter and Michael Dwumfor will return this week. They're a go.
Yep.
We just touched on the lack of interior push. I think a lot of that is attributes to the lack of experience for Ben Mason, a guy who is awesome personality, hardest worker you'll probably ever meet. He just needs more time. He just switched positions. It's been a while for him. Defensively, they recruited him as a linebacker fullback hybrid. He plays fullback both years. Now he's suddenly an interior defensive lineman.
Plays fullback well both years.
Something that they probably could have used on that goal line stand where they couldn't get in,
which couldn't punch it in.
Which we should have mentioned, and that's my fault. We should have mentioned that is probably the most worrisome thing of all is that Michigan's red zone package is like, hey, fade to this guy, fade to that guy, inside zone. They've got to figure something out there. Maybe they didn't show it. I hate that excuse. Usually it ends after week 3. I'm hoping to end it after Saturday, right? Because they got to score in the red zone. They have to.
Especially inside the 5.
Oh, my gosh. You're at the half-inch yard line against Middle Tennessee State. There's no excuse. There's no excuse.
If Michigan wants to be a downfield threat, all well and good, but you got to have the packages and the plays and the designs and stuff that is a green light and will get you into the end zone from those few feet out.
So having those two guys back in the interior defensive line is just massive. It's massive news. It's huge, especially for a matchup coming up in a couple of weeks after the bye against a guy named Jonathan Taylor, who is the best running back in college football without question and will test any interior defensive line. And I think if Michigan didn't have those two guys, I think their concentration this week has to be to keep them healthy. If you get a sizable lead, forget changing your offense up and putting your backups in there. Keep those guys at minimum snaps if you're up by a lot. I mean, this is a triple option offense, is one that you can easily get caught in the crowd and get hurt, especially with the unfortunate injury-prone histories those two guys have. Moving on from that, who do you want to see more out of this week? I'll give you my pick. It was my pick for what I thought we were going to see a lot out of the first week. Kwity Paye. I just want to see, and I just want to see more impact. He could be drawing some double teams here and there on that outside, which freed up some stuff for Hutch. However, I don't think that was the case. I think he just lacked a little of production in the defensive side of the ball in the first game. Offensively, I think we saw what we needed to see. The only thing that we really need to see technically, quote-unquote, more out of is the interior on the pass protection. That's it. So those are my two.
I'll give you my two. On defense, you expect it from a senior All-American. I think Lavert Hill's got to go out there and make the plays. He's not going to drop another pick six. He's not going to boot another punt return, but definitely not the way you want to start the season. He's a great bounce-back candidate. That is not who Lavert is. Lavert is one of the best football players, if not the best, in that locker room. I think that he's a future pro. He's someone who's going to be really, really good at the next stage, and you're not going to see many mistakes out of him. On the offensive side of the ball, a lot of hype around big speed and space, but I don't really think we saw enough of the tight ends. Obviously, McEwen had the big 28-yard touchdown.
But outside of that, you're looking for more of Nick Eubanks, especially with that big body and that versatile skill set, especially. I mean, he's a guy who, out of high school, was not as big as he is now. So you want to see more. You want to see more, and I think that also attributes to the staff a little bit and their play calling, which, again, is a sample size. And then the Army prep, touching on that with the inside intel as well. We've heard we heard this in the fall. We're hearing it now, and it was confirmed in Jim Harbaugh's press conference that Don Brown has, in fact, been preparing for this triple option offense since the middle of spring ball or early spring ball. He did mention for all the hardos out there that it did not take away from the preparation that he has been using for Ohio State's offense, on top of all of other league opponents, as he mentioned, and most importantly, the opener, which was the next game. And as this program always does, focuses on, quote-unquote, the next game. So let's move on from that, and this is your time to shine. It's always your time to shine. It's where you take it away. It's eyes on the enemy. Tell us about Army and who Michigan has across the hash.
Like we said earlier, this is the team with the second longest active win streak in college football. They bring in Kelvin Hopkins Jr., the quarterback. Last year, he ran for over 1,000 yards and threw for over 1,000 yards. This is a guy who can do it all, someone that you always have to have eyes on. This is a team that uses clock-draining drives. They run the ball. When they throw it, it's usually in short bursts. They won't take many shots. This is a team that's going to make you commit. And if Michigan doesn't commit to certain things and doesn't stay within their assignments, and if someone goes out and tries to make a play, I mean, if Hopkins makes the right read, which he did last year a lot, this is a guy who is really coming off one of the best statistical seasons that I've seen in a very long time. If he makes those good reads, then Michigan's going to pay. This is going to be a game about discipline and assignment, and as much irony as there is in that, and the fact that Army's probably the country's most disciplined team.
Right.
Look, this is a team that showed how dangerous they are. They pushed Oklahoma, a college football playoff team, to overtime last year, and I just think that it's not going to be the walkover that a lot of people think it might be. So
this is a game that's going to push Michigan's limits defensively because of the wear and tear that it is, and being on those drives and having to deal with those drives.
And mentally,
especially. This is a tough team. This is a strong team. This isn't a team that, and you can see this in John Bacon's new book, where they described this, the grittiness, dirtiness of playing a Michigan State team where they're going to punish you after the whistle. I don't think it's so much that with Army. I think it's the punish that you're going to take between the whistles, because it's literally an Army.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't put it much more plain than that. They're literally playing an Army. They're trained to be as such. So let's move on to Hail to the Spread. And this is one of the best segments in the world because we get to talk Vegas, we get to help people out that are listening who might just want to throw something here and there.
Oh yeah.
We look at these picks, we study them for a few days, and really come up with what we think it is. So let's go over that. So first up, we've got a pretty interesting one here, Syracuse and Maryland. We saw Syracuse struggle a bit. Maryland put up 79 points on Howard. I love the over in this game. Looking back at our picks from last week, Wisconsin and South Florida, that game did not go over because the South Florida high-power offense that we discussed at large did not show up in a shutout, 49-0. So that game was a one touchdown away from covering the 56 line. Didn't happen. So with this game, I like Josh Jackson at Maryland. I like the Mike Locksley offense. I like what they bring to the table. Syracuse has a lot of weapons out there. I think they're a team that likes to put up the points, especially with Dino Babers at the helm. So I like this one at over 58. This screams like a 34-31 type game, 34-28 type game, somewhere around there. I like 58. I think 58 is close, but this is the game we picked, and this is the game that I like to go over.
Yep. And I think that there's a good chance one of these teams just blows the roof off. It's not hard to fathom one of these teams going for 50 plus.
Oh, absolutely.
You still got to think, if it's going to be one of those teams, it could very well be Maryland. I think Mike Locksley, the offensive experience, he was a co-coordinator with Gaddis in Tuscaloosa last year. I think that,
and they've got something to prove.
Right,
This
you
is
make a statement.
A team that a lot of people thought was going to be absolutely terrible. Granted, Howard is not good, so putting up 79 is one thing. I think that they know that that's not a big deal, and I think they know that it's merely a number from last week. You're going to beat Howard regardless. Next game up, Iowa-Rutgers. It's open at -20 for the Hawkeyes, favored. I love that. I think Iowa is a team that's going to grind some more. They're going to go under center. They're going to control the time of possession. They're going to rely. I mean, Oliver Martin's out there as well. They've got weapons. They need a tight end factory. Nate Stanley. I think Nate Stanley's the most underrated quarterback in this conference.
Really?
I certainly do. I think he's good. I think Josh Jackson's right there too, as far as underrated goes. But I like Nate Stanley. I love the Iowa defense. I really do.
Yeah.
In this game, I know Rutgers had a really weird game. What Rutgers game isn't weird? I mean, but regardless, everyone was like, "Oh no, Rutgers is going to lose to UMass." Next thing you know, they win by like 20. And they bring in this southpaw quarterback who just launches the ball left and right, and their running back grabs a few here and there. I almost like the team total for Iowa here, but I'm going to go with the game total. Or I'm sorry, I'm going to go with the spread here with Iowa -20. I think they blow them out. I think they win by 20 plus at least.
It's not hard to see Iowa winning this game by 40. That passing game does take a hit. They lost Hawkinson, they lost Fant.
Right.
But this is still a team that shouldn't be sold
This is
short.
still Iowa. They're going to control the possession. They're not going to give Rutgers a chance. And I'll tell you what, if you had to pick a team out there that seizes opportunities, Rutgers is towards the bottom.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of the Big Ten, we have Vanderbilt and Purdue. The Boilermakers got upset in the tallest fashion against Nevada with a true freshman kicking an absolute bomb to upset the Boilermakers.
Yep.
Rondale Moore is Rondale Moore.
Yeah.
He's going to do Rondale Moore things. Unfortunately, Rondale Moore can't play defense for you.
Yep.
He could, probably, but they're not going to do it. So I like Vanderbilt. They opened at 9.5 underdogs. Vanderbilt's getting points in this game. This is an SEC team. It's a bottom-tier SEC team. Both teams are 0-1. I understand why they opened at that large of a point. Well, I don't understand why they opened at that large of a point margin. However, it's closed down to now 7.5, meaning a lot of bets are coming in on Vandy. So the Commodores are demanding some money, and the line's starting to close a little bit at 7.5. Grab this before 6.5. Because I feel like Vanderbilt wins this game.
Could be 28-21.
But I feel like if they lose,
35-28.
they lose only by a touchdown. That 7.5 line gives you that room. It gives you that peace of mind. The 9.5 was great. The 7.5 still pretty good. Right around plus 5.5, I'd get worried. I do think there's a greater chance they win this game outright than most underdog spreads. However, I like this one. If I had to pick a lock of the three, I like the over in Syracuse, Maryland. That's my lock of the week. But those are my three picks.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Iowa -20 for my lock of the week. Just with that defense, it's tough to see Rutgers maybe even putting up double-digit points. I could definitely see Iowa going for 30 or 40. This is a game that is in Iowa City. Definitely huge for Iowa. Anytime you could host a Big Ten team at home, you're going to be fired up. And really coming out with, I think this game could be at a 20-point margin in the first half.
Yeah, it's Rutgers. It's Rutgers. You're more times than not, you're going to benefit from betting against Rutgers. So let's move into our wrap up.
In a way, it's betting on Rutgers.
Right. Betting on Rutgers to be bad is like betting on Alabama to be good. It's essentially one and the same.
Oh, yeah.
So let's move to our wrap up. We'll get you guys out of here and send you home. And, well, you could be home.
Could be on your way to work.
Send you wherever you need to be.
Could be at the gym.
Could be a lot of places. If we pump you up for the gym, that's honestly an accomplishment, in my opinion. Let's go here. Let's break this game down. Look, Army's going to control the ball. Army's going to try and grind it out in the first half. Michigan needs to come out and score quick. That's what they do best with this new offense. That's what they need to do best. Last week, despite the field position on at least one of those drives, there was 3 drives in the first half where they scored a touchdown, all 3 in under 1 minute and 15 seconds. Something that you didn't expect to hear about Michigan football a couple of years ago, even last year.
Last year.
But that's the case.
Could take them a minute 15 to go 3 and out last year.
Right. And I think that they found what worked last week and stashed it for later. So if they open up the game with those RPOs over the middle, and just the RPO in general, which worked great in the time that they used it, the little amounts, but regardless, when they used it, it worked perfectly. I think they come out gunning. I think they need to come out gunning. And I think they need to assert a score and a lead off the bat, because otherwise Army starts to control that ball. Army starts to get gritty and really push the limits as far as a Michigan team goes that very well could find themselves in a tough spot in the second half if they don't come out hot and score right away.
Yeah, I think Army could easily march down the field in an 8-minute drive or a 10-minute drive in its first 2 possessions. If those drives end in touchdowns, you're looking at a ton of first half possession time, 14 points on the board, and I think Michigan with 4 fumbles last week kind of showed some turnover prone, and I don't love the fact that the ball security wasn't an emphasis, but I think this week it's going to be pretty big to keep that Army defense on its heels with the RPO. And then defensively, I think you got to be, focused on your assignment. And I think that it's going to be one of those weeks where you do your job, you trust that the guy next to you is going to do his, and I think that's the best way to go about stopping this triple option.
I mean, let's touch on that, because I think this defense is made to beat a triple option and made to beat a team that relies on just the option run. And that's something that you saw Michigan start to shut down when it played Ohio State. So for a long time, Ohio State, the Buckeyes really just brought Michigan and wore Michigan down on the option offense. Now they're starting to wear it down on the crossing routes, and we'll save that for November. But this is a team that the defense, I should say, is made to come off the edge. It's made to, like you said, pay attention to its assignments. It plays a lot of man. Pretty much everything it does is in man. Everyone should be accounted for, and it should be able to control, this offense. But like you said, that guy threw for over 1,000 yards and ran for over 1,000 yards. Yeah. Army showed a will to pass the ball in week 1 as well. So will it catch Michigan off guard? That's the question. I like Michigan in this game. Before we get to our scores and our players of the game, let's talk Vegas again. This is for Michigan versus Army. 22.5. The Wolverines are favored. It's gone down to what now?
It is 22.5.
It's still at 22.5, but it opened at 23. So it's down a half point. Nothing too drastic there. As far as covering goes, it's hard to tell this Michigan team. I think that they are pissed off about the outcome of last game. I don't know if it's enough to beat a team that's going to control the ball as much as Army is. I'm not going to go with the cover here. I think Michigan wins right around the 18-19 mark. I don't think you're wrong to go with the cover here. This is a game where if I'm a betting man, I'm not touching it. It's just a weird one to look at. I will say this, paying attention to who people are picking and looking around at the pundits as far as in the betting world goes, there are a lot of people that like the Wolverines to cover here. It is a small spread for a game where a team like Michigan should win by more, but this is an Army team that's used to winning 10 games in a row. They struggled against an astronomically bad Rice team, but regardless, Michigan, in theory, should cover this spread. However, I don't think they do. I think they win by right around 19. I think that the Army possession really, pushes it. I think Michigan controls the game score-wise. I think Army controls the ball possession-wise.
Yeah, and you got to look at the mental aspect, too. I mean, this Army team is, as we said, riding the big streak. Where would you rather play on a Saturday afternoon than the Big House? On a national stage. Game is being nationally televised by Fox. Look, this is their chance to come out and, if they win this game or even come close, they're going to get some AP votes next week.
They'll absolutely be somewhere.
They'll probably move somewhere within the 22 to 25 range. They opened the season at 27. So
absolutely.
We're looking at a team with a lot of motivation. It's not a Middle Tennessee State where they're going to come in and try to fine-tune their own stuff before their Conference USA season.
So as far as the score goes, I like this one. Michigan 35, Army right around 17-21. I'm going to go with 17. And I like that, which means I like the over as well at 47. I like Michigan to score. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if Michigan goes out there and scores a 45, right? What worries me is the
Close to
possession.
my prediction.
What worries me is the possession. The possession of Army worries me as far as their points go. I think Michigan scores more times than not. I think they punt the ball about 3 times in this game max. I just think Army's possession game and the way that they determine how much you're going to have the ball and how much they're going to have the ball. When they have the ball, they're like, look, buddy, Shea Patterson's not getting this ball for 7 to 8 minutes. There's just no chance it's going to happen. Sorry. Like, great RPO, but you're just not going to get the ball, so it doesn't matter. So that's why I like this one at 35-17. I like the over, but again, if I were a betting man, I wouldn't touch the spread.
Yeah, I think it's going to get real close to the spread. My prediction is 31-10. Michigan comes out on top. Look, as you said, the time of possession is really going to cut into this.
So you're an under guy here.
I am an under guy here. I think that Army's going to sit on this football for as long as they can. They're going to milk the play clock. They're going to keep it on the ground. They're going to get first downs. They're a tough team. And honestly, in the long run, will it amount to a win for them? Probably not. They'll probably get a first down or 2 before punting on a lot of series. I think that where it really makes a difference is Michigan's time of possession. They could have as many 1 minute, 15-second drives as they want, but if that time's not on the clock when they get the football,
it's almost like they're making their defense tired at that point, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because they're out, and that puts more things into question. So,
yeah.
Players of the game, defensively, I think I have to go with Khaleke Hudson. This is a game meant for a Viper. This is a game where the Viper's going to have a lot of opportunities to make plays. So I like Khaleke Hudson defensively, and offensively, I know we said Shea Patterson last week. I feel like Shea Patterson has a chip on his shoulder. There's no doubt he sees what people are saying. There's not a doubt in the world. Okay, it's not like he's avoided his phone for a week. He's not that kind of guy. Okay, he's also not Baker Mayfield in that he's going to screenshot them all and tweet about them, right? Regardless, I think he's got a chip on his shoulder, and I think he's pretty good at being a quarterback. And I think he's going to prove that on Saturday against an Army team whose defense is far more inferior than its offense. So I like Shea on offense. I like Khaleke on defense.
Yeah, and this is I got to go with Shea on offense too. He's a guy who's motivated. He walked into the press conference following Saturday night's game, looking at almost midnight, and he sits there and accepts blame.
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
is a guy who just won a game
out of
40
turn
to 21.
Out of turn too. He's asked about one thing and he makes sure, hey, look, I got to work on this. You don't see that a lot.
Yeah, he really emphasized taking care of the football. This is a guy who wants it badly.
Absolutely.
And I think he sees Saturday as a chance to, as we said, national stage, to kind of silence a lot of what came out of last week.
Defensively, who you got?
Kwity Paye. I'll keep it short. Kind of a I wouldn't say a silent game guy.
Well, he's my prove it guy this week.
Right. Yeah. And I think that he does prove it. So
Good.
He's a guy who's going to go in there and wreak havoc on that option.
All right, so you got 31-10. I'm at 35-17. You're at the under. I'm at the over, and neither of us are touching the spread. So that was Hail to the Podcast. It's great to be back for another episode. We will see you guys again next Friday.
Definitely.
Thanks for tuning in. Let your friends know to subscribe. And as I always, I messed up, but we're going to keep it rolling, baby. As always, if you hail to the victors, you're probably going to hail to the podcast. We'll see you guys next week.